So I'm Brad McCabe with Sponsor Circle. Fantastic to be able to host today's session discussing the return to live events and the sponsorship effects, and looking at a couple of the events that were really the first events back live in Canada. But before we get into that, just want to promote a couple sessions we have coming up. So next week, we've got an Ask Me Anything session with Brent Barutis from the Partnership Group and with Francis Dumais from Elephant. So if you've got issues, general questions you're looking to talk about, whether it's on the branding side, activation, sponsorship side, we're happy to bring our thoughts and learnings that we've been able to put together over the last number of years and share that with you, kind of a general session on anything that comes to mind. And then October 20th, we're going to be running a session looking at cannabis, how cannabis is plugging into advertising, branding, a lot of the gray areas, no-go areas, and exploring that. And then coming up later in the fall, we're going to have a session on sponsorship in women's sport. Another session looking at podcasts and sponsorship, and then a follow-on session with Judy Haber on naming rights. So lots coming, so keep an eye on your inbox for those invitations, and they're always available on Eventbrite when they go live. But today we've got a fantastic conversation. We've got Chris McCashew from Ethics, which represents the Montreal Canadiens among a whole bunch of other opportunities, and Pat O'Brien from the Calgary Stampede. So two events that were on the forefront of opening up and getting audiences back in, and happy to pick their brain and learn a bit of the war stories and how things progressed, and hopefully being able to share some elements that you'll be able to pick up and incorporate into your ongoing events as they come back live. So Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm scared. I don't like to talk to people. I'm extremely shy. So thank you for having me here. Just to jump on what was said earlier, I'm Chris. I'm over at Ethics. It's been a 35-year relationship now with the Montreal Canadiens, their AHL affiliate, the Laval Rocket, as well as everything that is Evenco here in Montreal. So that means Oceaga, which is we position it as Coachella of Canada, Il Scenic, which is our EDM festival, Lasso, our country music festival, and then Spectra, which handles Just for Laughs, the Francopholies, and the Jazz Festival. So all in all, we have 27 properties. I'm not going to talk to you about them all, but I think, like Pat, we all had a nice little 18 months of deviating from one plan to another plan to try and figure out how we operate in a new world with no fans in arenas, especially for us going through two different playoff seasons, one with absolutely no fans, and then the second season last year with no fans at the start, and finishing up with 3,500 fans in an arena that holds just under 22,000. So I think we're gonna have a lot of fun chatting today. I'm actually looking super forward to hearing what Pat's gonna share with us as well about his experience over at Stampede.
And on to you, Pat.
Over to me. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Chris. Pat O'Brien. I'm the manager of sponsorship for the Calgary Stampede. Very fresh off of our 2021 edition of the Stampede, which just wrapped up mid-July. Absolutely, we're no different than anybody else in the event industry with a devastating 2 years. Actually, 2020 was the only year after multiple world wars, a flood in 2013, and the list goes on, that we survived the Calgary Stampede except for 2020 due to a pandemic. So absolutely devastating for the events industry. We were no different. We're just a big event that happens not only in July, but Stampede Park hosts in a normal year over 1,200 events through our 220 acres that we have very close into the downtown core of Calgary. So really bouncing back is certainly one of many phrases that we're going to be talking about with the return to live events, and very excited to answer questions and share not only my experiences, but multiple departments' experiences throughout the organization in 2021. So looking forward to this. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, I guess to start off with just, how did things turn out? How was the summer and coming back?
What summer?
Yeah. Chris, you go first. You kicked it. You started it. So
I can start. To be honest, I'll even go back to pre-COVID, heading into COVID, and when we got the news. I think that's an interesting story in its own. So I remember being at the last hockey game at the Bell Center, full capacity, so 21,234 fans. Nashville Predators were in town. We were hosting a variety of our Evenco-based clients for our new country music festival we were planning to launch. That was the big night, obviously. With Nashville being a country city, we thought it made sense. So it was a big country music theme night in the Bell Center. And we had all of our major partners that we deal with in the Habs business that typically also like the festivals for a variety of different reasons. And I looked at my phone at Twitter and I saw a story breaking about an NBA game being canceled. And I texted my wife saying, "Are you following what's going on in the news?" And she said, "Yeah, it doesn't look so good." Game ended. I get back home around midnight. Woke up super early, like 5 a.m. and I saw the news that the hockey season had been suspended they didn't announce how much time. And I thought initially, 2 weeks and we'll be back at it. Well, 2 weeks turned into 18 months. And during that time, so that we were all there celebrating that evening was also canceled, as was Osheaga, which for us is a major outdoor event. 180 to 200,000 folks get outside over 3 days. Some of the best musicians in the world, like Post Malone was there, Travis Brown, everyone who headlines any major show in North America was supposed to come in. To see how that affected our business was absolutely crazy because 1, you lose revenue on the ticket sales, 2, on the sponsorship side, and 3, it was something that I don't ever want to live through again. And I say that openly is when there's a certain hype around your city, and we're fortunate in Montreal that we do have the Canadiens, that's part of our multicultural fabric, but we're also known as a very fun event city. We're a festival city. People love coming to Montreal for the summer and see Osheaga canceled and Bill Sunday canceled. And then all the other stuff canceled wherever there was an experience to be had. Kind of didn't sit well with anyone that lived here. And Montreal, many folks may or may not know, we were also the epicenter of COVID for the longest time in Canada. I mean, our death rate was absolutely absurd. At one point, we were #1 globally per capita. So we had military rule here. It was pretty rough. We were under curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. every morning. We would get like an Amber Alert style message on our phone saying you have to be home in 15 minutes kind of thing. And to see how a lot of our properties survived was interesting. A lot of us had to pivot the live experience into a digital kind of play. So with like a Just for Laughs, a lot easier to do, where you have a venue and a comedian telling a story. But when you look at when hockey came back, what that looked like for us was a whole new world that no one expected. No fans inside a building that is regarded as the loudest building in hockey in the world. You could hear a pin drop from one corner to the next, and it was a little depressing. And but what it opened up for us was a lot of opportunities that, I mean, the league actually, the NHL made a big move saying we're going to start selling tarps within the building to compensate some partners that were there. And we were fortunate here in Montreal that we were able to compensate a lot of our partners with those, but we also used it as new opportunity with a new Canadian division to position this as a Canadian play, meaning you get the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton in town, which normally aren't here as much. So we could speak to more partners, but at the same time, it still wasn't the same. And then this last season we slowly saw a return of fans to the building, but it was under some super tight parameters, which I understand, as does everyone that was in here. But to start the playoffs with no fans, and then to get into Game 5 with the Leafs, we had 2,500 fans in the arena, which seemed like a million. So it was the first time we had seen people in a long time. And for me, as someone who's always around people, to go from none to 2,500, it seemed like a full arena. And then to get to 3,500 in the finals was a big win again. And today they just announced we're opening up in full capacity. So it's nice to see that things are slowly getting back to normal. But at the same time, it's hit all of our industries in the live event space extremely tough. And we're fortunate because of how many properties we operate within and how we're able to pivot from the on-site experience to offering new digital experiences or experiences that we can cater to a customer or client or consumer specifically for them. So it was a weird one for us, and I could talk hours about it. It's something I don't even like to think about anymore, thinking the storm is over. But I mean, we thought that last time and it came back, and now we're heading into a 4th wave. And I just keep my fingers crossed that our season starts on time and that our festivals next year are full capacity and everyone's re-engaging from partners to sponsors and fans.
And how was your experience, Pat, coming back?
Yeah, it was, I think, similar to Chris. We can't talk too much in right away about 2021 without reflecting back to 2020. And when, March came about and when we really started laying off employees, when we really started realizing events were going to be canceled. And then it was April 21st was when we made the announcement that the Stampede would not be moving forward in 2020. It was again, certainly devastating. And then with all of the revenue that we would have had from our year-round events, that not happening as well. And then we had a little bit of a lull coming off of the summer where we had a couple of events, which was nice. And the end of August going into Q4 for 2020. But and then as everyone knows, when you start planning the following year, everyone was waiting for the vaccine. Everyone was waiting for any type of a glimmer of hope that was going to come in 2021. And our organization was certainly resilient and very determined that there was no way we were going to have 2 years in a row, that there was going to be a cancellation of the Calgary Stampede. So really with the collaboration of the Ministry of Health, and then of course the operating body, Alberta Health Services, or AHS, we worked very diligently and very collaboratively since the end of 2020, going into Q1 of 2021, knowing that we were going to have this event, regardless of what it looked like. We had so many different processes and different approvals that were needed for the different zones that we have on Stampede Park, whether it be our outdoor, indoor, agriculture, music, the list goes on. So we really needed to understand what AHS was going to bring to the table, which was the trend. Where was the trend in Alberta? Where was the trend going to be in the summer of 2021? Because we had some great learnings from 2020. We knew that COVID did not like the heat. We knew that it did not like outdoors. So those were two bonuses for us going into 2021. And then fast forward, when the Alberta government launched our 3-stage approach to restrictions being lifted, agree or disagree, all the people that are listening right now, but that's what our government decided to do. And then July 1st was the stage 3 approach where all restrictions were lifted, which obviously led to a very successful event for the Calgary Stampede. We still initiated a mask mandate in some of our venues, the outdoors, not so much, but certainly going indoors. So we wanted to be even more conservative than what the government was around the safety of our guests. The hundreds of thousands of dollars we spent on sanitation and disinfecting of our venues. We are also, sorry, a little plug here for the Stampede, but also being GBAC certified, which is the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, really allowing our venues within the park to have that accreditation to give our guests year round, not just during the 10 days, but year round, that sense of confidence being accredited with GBAC. So, really going into the return, it really became real going into Q2 that this was going to move forward. And I know we'll talk about impact to our partners later, but it was very exciting when it got that real that this was going to happen, and it did. And we were very pleased to host over 500,000 people during the 10 days. Incredibly successful from our budget expectations. Our partners were incredibly impressed, and we're looking forward to 2022.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on an interesting thought talking about conservative approach, and I know sponsorship always tends to push the limits on what an organization can do or an event can do, and kind of you're always trying to think of something new and interesting, which is outside the standard programming. But in a conservative mindset, did you find you were really restricted on what you could deliver for partners?
We always, our strategy, which a lot of festivals you could easily adapt because this is our market research, it's the expectation of our guests year over year, is to have the Calgary Stampede be similar yet unrecognizable. So we continually use that as our driving force to challenge the programmings that we're going to have. And at the same time, to your point, Brad, we had to meet these guidelines, which was reduced number of midway rides, reduced number of space for midway food vendors. So we had certainly a very similar Stampede in that regard. And then the unfamiliar is just, we constantly look at new programs that we're going to be able to bring. We had to be a little bit more conservative on that because we were just so damn excited to have the event. So, that's really where the conservative approach came in, was still having some unique opportunities, which we did with our grandstand productions, but really, making sure top of mind, our guests feel confident. And, it certainly did as the 10 days went on. More and more confidence of safety came about, and our attendance numbers just consistently grew over the 10 days because the public sentiment was a lot stronger going into it. So I hope that answers your question.
No, definitely. And I think, Chris, you were kind of on a different plane because you were limited to 2,500 fans in the stands.
Yeah, but you know what? There's a lot of similarities though to what Pat mentioned too, and I didn't even go there, but something that was very important to, I say us as that bigger company like the Groupe Ash, was not only to return with fans in the stands, but also to ensure their safety. So similar to the Stampede, we also, we were the first NHL team to have a certification with GBAC. We brought on Clorox as our official cleaning partner. And the sanitary measures that we have in place here with the Montreal Canadiens is the same throughout all of our properties. So as an example, Osheaga is this next weekend coming up. It's at reduced capacity, so 10,000 people a day as opposed to 40 to 50. Activations aren't what they used to be. We've essentially reinvented, similar to the Stampede, we've reinvented our festival space to still provide the fan base with an activity they can do that they can enjoy. But again, because the borders are what they are, we don't have our lineup that we normally have. So we have more Quebec-based music and more Canadian-based musicians that are playing, which is a win in its own. But we've kind of changed how we operate. I mean, and again, here in Quebec, we were the first province to institute the vaccine passport. So before anyone gets in, there's the scan of your passport on your phone, as well as the identification that needs to be shown. And we've got some pretty big sanitary measures in place because at the end of the day, we want to just not make sure that we're putting on a world-class event to the best of our ability, but to ensure the safety of every single person coming into the site and leaving the site. And the same with the building where I am right now. Like me coming into the Bell Center where I'm today, I mean, I'm an employee here and I'm double vaxxed. We still have a pretty rigorous testing policy when we do come in that involves like temperatures and just making sure that we all fall within the right limit that they're looking for, because at the end of the day, our group's position is we also don't want to be tagged as to a super spreader event either, if that ever does come back, as doing everything in our power from operations standpoint and the marketing side as well to make sure that we're putting out a great product we're all proud of with the limitations that we do or don't have in place.
Yeah, that becomes a big challenge. You've got to balance that, giving the user experience and the fan experience, but controlling the public health concerns.
And that's it too, because I mean, and Pat said it right at the start is, I mean, we've also been working extremely closely with Health Quebec or Santé Quebec here and the City of Montreal and the Government of Canada to make sure that we're doing things properly. I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone likes to make a dollar, but if you're making it the wrong way, it's not something that we want to do. And just with the recent news that we're opening up at full capacity, last Saturday we had a scrimmage, red versus white, 7,500 fans were in the building. And the reason why we had limitations of fan base is because we're required to have so many access points to come in and out where people aren't overlapping. Because when you have a building of 20, let's just call it 22,000 fans, there's a lot of crossing zones. So, I mean, we've got 4 decks in the Bell Center. So we want to also make sure when people come into the building, they come in almost like a corral. And when you're told to leave now, so on the Jumbotron, it says, if you're in section 107, rows 1 through 9, it is time to leave. And they go out and they corral out the next group. And that way they're trying to really limit traffic and we'll say cross contamination, but everyone in the building is double vaxxed, but at the same time, we're not taking any risks. And everyone, when they come in, get a nice little bottle of Clorox and they have wipes and everything's already been disinfected, but just taking that extra measure to make sure that everyone is in a safe environment. And if you do come to the game and feel like it's a controlled environment, which is what we do, and put it on the best fan experience, which we can. And up until about 3 years ago, we had that in the NHL and we're trying to get it back from Vegas, who does a great job with everything they do around the game of hockey. But we're going to try and give them a run for the money this season with the full crowd back in the Bell Center, coming off a decent Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, and I guess you've kind of pointed out that there's some new opportunities for engagement in terms of all the public health measures you have. You've developed a relationship with Clorox. And I think there's so many other opportunities to create that. Have you got other examples of things that just?
Oh, I can talk for hours on. We were extremely creative last year about partners we were able to bring in, and again, we're one of the fortunate clubs out there that has, and I call it a true national fan base, like Vancouver to Halifax. There's Montreal Canadiens fans, and our viewership is what predicates our price points, obviously, and the association to a club that's been around since 1909. And there were a lot of opportunities that the NHL brought out last season for all the clubs in the league, whether they're in the top tier or the bottom half, to be able to re-engage with partners or to provide value and lost revenue. For example, like concessions weren't open, obviously, so people are losing money there, or things that we would do in arena we couldn't do. So they came out last year with the helmet on the logo helmet as a way to give partners an opportunity to get the TV eyeballs. They came out with the tarps in the hockey arenas last season, and I wanted them in Alliance. They represented, I think, like 15 or 16 tarps, and we were one of the lucky clubs that were able to sell them as new business. Just how we positioned it as, here's an opportunity to be in front of X amount of eyeballs a night, and everyone's at home. There's nothing else to do. So it was a change in our story. But it was a story that was compelling because the majority of those partners stayed on with us once we did like a 1 year kind of thing, and a lot of reconfirmed their position with the club because it was such a great experience for them. But just thinking outside the box and giving maybe some smaller players that would never be able to do a deal with us an opportunity to get access to our viewership and show that there is value there. And I was successful bringing in a bunch of different tech companies last season. And one that I always talk about because I'm extremely proud of it was the two guys I saw in Dragon's Den from Hush Blankets. They launched hush.ca, their Canadian website, with us, and it went really well. And they were showing me their live conversions during the game of what the broadcast was doing for them at the storefront. And it was really interesting to see is how the viewership was engaged in the game when the game was on, but at intermissions and commercials, they were on their website, and the numbers and traffic spoke for themselves. And they actually got a nice little feature in Sports Business Journal about what that did for them in terms of sales. We didn't go into the nitty gritty of it all, but it was an interesting piece, and it was an opportunity, and some people saw it as an opportunity. And again, we looked at it as an opportunity and made good with all of our partners that had been with us forever, but at the same time saw the opportunity to maybe engage with a new group of partners, and something that I'm fortunate we were able to do. But at the same time, we don't take anything for granted. Just hope we never have to live through that again.
And did you amp up your engagement beyond broadcast and beyond the stadium? So utilizing your social.
Oh yeah, we were engaging everywhere. And truth be told, I mean, hockey is not the NBA, which is extremely I won't say vocal, but extremely engaged on TikTok and Instagram. Like, hockey is a little bit slower. We're fortunate again that we have a very strong digital and a marketing team that kind of are, I'll say, extremely innovative and lead the forefront in the league with this. And we started doing, again, using our Evenco arm, the entertainment arm, to bring in DJs on Twitch. We did like a Twitch broadcast presented by a brand, and it was a great opportunity for our fans to say, hey, you know what, I'm getting to see a live, whatever it is, rock or EDM or pop music show for an hour and a half before a puck drop, and it's being presented to a brand that I may or may not consume, and kind of a fun little story to be told there. And just reaching all different demographics in every single market we could that wasn't inside the Bell Center. It was, how do we provide that Bell Center experience for everyone who's stuck at home? And I know we talked about this when it was just us three earlier this week, was we came up with a bunch of great concepts, and one that never actually came into fruition was the one that we worked extremely hard on. Was we wanted to, and we did create a Bell Center luxury suite, and it was going to go in market. X amount of people were going to have the ability to have the Montreal Canadiens mobile show up in their house and fully equipped with that company's branding and the full experience, from a hostess to open bar to food. It was supposed to be really great. And then unfortunately, COVID took another turn and numbers spiked here again, and public health shut it down with the curfew. So we weren't able to bring it to market, but there was even a live TV hit that was going to be on our broadcast. And here's what's going on in the XYZ mobile with the Canadiens. And it was a great project that we worked on. And I know there's a million different things everyone in our space, whether it be sports or entertainment or lifestyle, the event side, came up with that we were all passionate about, but for a variety of reasons, either didn't come into fruition or were shut down because COVID was COVID, and it changed the way a lot of businesses operate. But I think the silver lining was it changed the way we operate, but also changed the way we think. It forced us to be creative. It forced us to be innovative and come up with solutions and concepts and ideas that we never would have thought of prior. So I think it's making us all smarter, and we learn to operate like with a leaner staff and a meaner team, and making sure that, like, for us, it's important to have not only a world-class product on the ice or in the arenas or in our venues, but also a world-class experience for everyone involved. So that partner client relationship for us is extremely important, and we value that as much as we do as a sellout of the Bell Center.
Yeah, and for you, Pat, I mean, definitely you would have had to have taken a lot of the elements into a virtual world and outside of the normal footprint of the Stampede last year. How much of that learning did you carry forward to 2021?
It was, and I didn't mention it earlier because we could certainly have a session just on 2020, but even though we weren't having our traditional Stampede and a million plus people gathered together, we still did our spirit campaign. We still knew that our guests were expecting the Stampede to do something, and some type of engagement. So we did both. We really looked at several different ways to be able to have an online presence as well as a live, obviously with the approval of Alberta Health Services. And I remember one of our partners, and again, we were talking about this earlier this week as well, one of our partners, when I proposed that we're looking at a drive-through pancake breakfast, he said, "Don't you dare sell that to anybody else. It's ours. We're taking that." So it was really a way not only to engage our guests and the consumer of the Stampede Spirit campaign, but also our partners were able to tie their brand to something that the Stampede was doing. And you're absolutely right with, in hindsight, we probably could have done a few more exciting things, but when you cancel the event in April and you're down to 15 to 20% of your staff are still active, we did an amazing job with the Spirit campaign and coming back to Calgarians with what we were able to do. And that involved, obviously grocery partners with some pancake, packages that you could pick up and have your own caravan breakfast at home, to a Nashville North lineup that we partnered with some media partners on, and so forth, that people were able to have their Nashville North experience in their backyard. And just, organically, people are going to do that, but we wanted to be able to lead it in any way that we could to give them the tools to be able to have a great experience over the 10 days. So, what learnings do we have from that going into 2021? It was a combination of the two. We really looked at a lot of our digital and social platforms and how we were able to wrap them into something in 2021, knowing though that we were able to have the more traditional Stampede and people down to the park. So that was certainly where our priority lied, on getting people down to the park, but still remembered several of the wins that we had from 2020, which everybody needs to do. We always have to learn year over year, regardless of an opportunity to improve or a huge success. So yeah, it worked out well.
And how did you find how responsive or ready to move your partners were, or new partners were, into coming back to live?
It was all over the map, for lack of a better way to say it. For us, we had partners who had made the decision to globally not be involved in events, which certainly involved us, and because they're global partners, and we respected that. As much as we tried to give them a level of confidence the event was going to move forward and how safe it was going to be, they made that decision, and certainly it was no reflection of a future relationship with us for 2022 and beyond. We had some partners who felt they couldn't activate and bring their brand to life, but still hosted and still had a client base for all of our hosting opportunities at the Stampede. And then we had other partners that activated as if there was the word pandemic never existed, and hosted as if they always would. So it was very, very interesting, the conversations that between myself and the sponsorship team had with these partners to really understand their objectives, and the internal conversations. I can't even imagine what they had around people who regionally who want to be part of the event versus naturally or globally, who had to trump them and say that you're not. So it was all over the map for us. But ultimately, we had a great experience with the brands who were activating, great experience for those brands who did host, because the ones who, I'm not going to name names, but there were several that came back and said, yeah, you guys were right. We should have activated. So but that's okay. We take those learnings and we move on. So that was kind of where it was high level for our partners.
Well, yeah, you certainly get into some extenuating issues. And I know I've seen it with a lot of partners where the marketing team wants to go and HR has put across, we can't have any of our employees at an event until, some of them as far as Q2 of 2022. So it creates a lot of complications about what they want to do presence-wise.
I'd put it the other way, actually. Some of the employees were taking direction from their companies. Again, I'm generalizing here, where the marketing department were very protective of the brand, and they didn't want their brand to be associated with a large gathering, like we were anticipating having. So, but again, on the flip side, there are other marketing companies that were with you through thick and thin, and if you're a go, we're a go, and they were very pleased with the result.
So with the adjustments you were making for some of the partners, and I assume some of them are probably on multi-year contracts. I mean, are you still doing a lot of juggling and carryover from 2020 and adjustments into 2021?
I'll jump in here first, and yes, to all of the above. We want to respect the investment. It was inconsistent. It was based on the objectives of the partner. We had partners in 2020, regardless of what we were doing with the Spirit campaign or live events, gave us full rights fees because they wanted the success of the Calgary Stampede to be maintained and grow. And there were others that were looking to negotiate and maybe look at another year on their agreement because they missed the 2020 Calgary Stampede. So it was again inconsistent, and we just worked on a case-by-case basis to make sure it was a win-win for both of us.
Yeah, and then Chris, I know you were lucky enough to have some form of a season.
Yeah, but even so, that's why I was chuckling. I was quiet. I was like, I'll let Pat start on this one. So obviously, when our season came to a halt in 20, I don't even know what year we are anymore. We and again, we're fortunate that we've got partners at all different ranges from different kinds of properties, whether they be TV visible or naming rights, wherever they may be. So again, when we made the playoffs, that was an opportunity for us to go after a lot of those partners and talk to them about saying, hey, you know what, you weren't able to do your in-arena stuff this year. Would you be open to looking at the playoffs? Because with us, playoffs are always over and above in terms of investment. And would you be open to new ideas? So along with the marketing folks at those brands and our marketing and strat team, we were able to come up with not just TV properties, but things that could live on social, whether contests or chances to win the following season. And we were extremely successful with that. And the partners who didn't want to go down that route, we either just rolled that, like they wanted to support the club. So we rolled that into the next season, which was one that just ended. And out of good faith, and we working with make goods with everyone, we offered them a little bit extra icing on the cake for them sticking with us. And to your point, yeah, we do have most of our deals are multi-year, and we'd rather keep a partner happy than potentially make them a little bit angry and lose them down the road. So we were all extremely flexible with them and worked through them all last season, and looking forward to starting with a clean slate this season. Now that we know that we're going to be starting it up with a full capacity arena, which means everyone should be back to zero, meaning there won't be any lost revenue. But again, we don't know anything until the season actually starts and it ends. But we were extremely lucky that we made playoffs 2 years in a row, and that really helped us work with the partners, and they understood the visibility they were getting in exchange for what they were giving up.
And how did you find the fan receptiveness to having partners in the space? Definitely, I can understand the social and the virtual elements. That's more accessible. But then going back to grabbing a sample off somebody, did you find there was much of a challenge with that?
What do you mean, like a sample, like exit sampling in a building kind of thing?
Well, just the physical interaction with with a partner.
Right. You know what? One of the most interesting things that happened to me last season, and again, I never thought I would be in this situation, but when we allowed 2,500 people in the arena, we had a couple partners that were in there with us as well. And seeing people that I dealt with regularly in person, whether it be in Toronto or New York or Boston or even here in Montreal, and having not seen them or even had a meal with them in a long time, was almost surreal. Like, I'll give you the perfect example. I sat with my boss one night before the game and we had dinner together. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? It's been 18 months since I've seen you. And we used to see each other every day. And we would travel together and meet clients. So it was a different kind of perspective. And you could see everyone was just kind of grateful to be back together. Had nothing to do with what was in front of us, had nothing to do with how long the relationship has been or the level of investment. It was, hey, you know what? We've passed the big hurdle. We're at a pro sports event. We're fortunate to be one of the 2,500 people in the arena or 3,500 people. And let's enjoy it for what it is tonight, because we don't know what tomorrow brings. And that's what I think. It humbled a lot of us in my space specifically, not really being able to control what the future holds. And all partners were happy. But that said, something you mentioned earlier, and Pat said it as well, is there are still partners for this season who may be on a hosting basis that their companies aren't permitting them to host. Don't want to be associated with a potential gathering, regardless of what health protocols are in place. So in that level, everyone's different. I mean, at the end of the day, we work with our partners, not against them. I think that's the big learning that we have. I've always thought that way, as has my group, but work with them, and everyone has different. When people are ready to go back to office, they're ready to go back to office. When companies allow them to go back to office, and when they feel safe going to events again, we'll be the first person to be there and say, hey, you know what, come on back and experience one of the most historic clubs in sports franchises back in the Bell Center. Come watch a game, and that level of excitement's there. But the first game back for me was extremely weird, like looking around saying, this makes no sense. There's no one in the fans. I'm here watching the Leafs play. It's quiet. We heard like the EA Sports sound playing from that you heard in the broadcast, but it's just a different environment, and it was kind of creepy. I mean, that's the nicest way of saying it. So to see people back, it's a blessing in disguise for a lot of us. Just that interaction with humans sounds weird, but when you're in the Bell Center and people are all over the place versus nobody, it's just a quiet environment.
And I guess for you, Pat, you would have been right after everything got lifted in Alberta. You sounds like you had fantastic attendance, but did you have hesitancy for engagement?
At the beginning, yeah, because literally we were 7 days after the restrictions were lifted, so it was, and we anticipated that, and we, with our marketing and our strategy around, giving that level of confidence to get people down to the park or to increase our ticket sales for our rodeo or evening show performance. It was, and I mentioned it very briefly earlier, it just slowly started to increase as the days went on. We had a beautiful weather as well, so we were very lucky that way for people to come down to the park. And then ultimately going into final weekend, we wanted to, not only continue with the promotions that we have with frontline workers and so forth. We actually did a grad promotion. We did a number of other ones for people to just come down to the park and complimentary admission. And then we said thank you to Calgary and opened the gates on final Sunday for people to come down and enjoy their Stampede experience. So certainly the engagement grew, not only because of confidence that people had around safety protocols and the government being behind the event, but also between the weather and the understanding of, number of cases. We were public when we had a number of cases. Our licensed venue, our largest licensed venue that we have, called National North, where you actually had to show proof of vaccination and or have a rapid test before you get into the venue. That's a 4,300 person venue. So it was, we only had 5 cases. A positive case is asymptomatic, and people left the park. They were incredibly embarrassed. They had no idea, obviously. And then overall, after the event was over, we had 71 cases out of over 550,000 people that were traced back to Stampede Park, which is a 0.01% of the people who attended. So that was absolutely amazing. So the engagement grew. Those partners who did activate absolutely were ecstatic with the turnout of the people, and they watched it grow, and their aided and unaided awareness numbers were through the roof, obviously post-event as we got our research back. Yeah, that's about the extent at a high level again of the engagement side.
And I guess leading into coming back to live, did you have a lot of leadership challenges that you had to deal with internally just to get people on board to some return to normal?
Leadership challenges in regards to our sponsors or internally?
Internally.
For us, I'll let Chris obviously speak, but we were all very, our senior leadership gave us the level of confidence we were moving forward. I drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago, but the confidence we had, we thought we were going to have 1 million. We were that confident. And so to have, close to 60% of that was huge. And just like any event, regardless of the scale, you always invite 100 people. If you get 60, 70% show up, that's a good party. And that's a good event. So the leadership from the Calgary Stampede standpoint had their vision. They were resilient. They knew what we needed to do, and everybody from senior leadership to middle management was on site.
And Chris, I imagine you were in a slightly different scenario just because it's been so paced out.
Yeah, it's similar but different at the same time. I mean, everything with us has always been in the best interest of everyone involved, right? And leadership made it very clear is let's do this properly and work with health authorities. And obviously we would have liked to have full capacity last season, but government regulations didn't allow for it. So once they've been allowed for it, we want to make sure we do everything right and just be safe. But it's a very supportive group. Everyone just wanted the best thing for the group itself, and obviously all of our partners. So very similar to kind of what Pat was saying. And it's one of those interesting times where, I mean, internally we all support each other's decisions, regardless of where we land in the corporate hierarchy. It's kind of have a fearless leader here in our office, as well as fearless leader of the group that made some tough decisions. And I mean, I think when we look back at the decisions that were made, everyone internally supported them because it was the right decision for that situation. And obviously there were some other things that were beyond our control that we couldn't control, which is public health. And I think we all aligned with what they did. And here in Quebec, I like to say we did a fantastic job with what we could do based on the regulations and protocols in place.
Yeah, and I think looking at your scenario coming into a new season, and the threat of the fourth wave, or if we're in the fourth wave, depending on where you feel it, have you had to approach your contracts differently?
Not really. We're super transparent with everyone we deal with. From, I mean, if we say like clients or partners, like there's no real gray zone, because we talk about everything and all the different scenarios prior to doing anything. And if there is something that does put a stop in place, obviously we do have certain mechanics in place that protect both them and us. But kind of just to echo kind of what I said earlier, was at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. I mean, we work with our partners, they work with us, and otherwise it wouldn't be a true partnership. It would just be, hey, give me your money, thank you. It's not that at all our business. It's, hey, how do we work this together to ensure that we exist and you guys continue to grow as well? And that's kind of the approach we take, is let's work with them as opposed to against them. So if someone has a bad year, we'll find ways to make it work.
And are you building that contingency into your contract, or has it always been there? I guess a lot of people.
There's always been an understanding between parties that if something were to happen, that we'll sort it out together and come up with the best case scenario versus the worst case scenario and work together. There are certain pieces that are there as well if the season's canceled, but in terms of like COVID and pandemic protection, we do have certain language we do institute, but it's all relative to the canceled season.
I know that seems to be the biggest question I'm getting from so many people, and I saw a couple times in the advanced questions. It just, what should I be writing into my contract to protect them, protect us, and have that transparency up front? Because
I think it's just having an open mind as well. Like our legal works hand in hand with the legal of our partners. It's not, here's our ironclad contract. It's, here's what we're proposing. What do you think? We've always find something that lands in between anyways. So, I mean, a contract really is just formalizing everything that's there. And one of the things that we always do, and we say it vocally, and we're very strong with it, is we always say what's in the contract is just the understanding between two parties. We're gonna deliver more than what's actually in there, because that's how we view sponsorship. It's, hey, if we can bonus you, we'll do it, and we're not going to charge you for it. So we're extremely flexible with everyone we deal with. It's not ironclad by any means.
And for you, Pat, did you have a lot of scenario A, scenario B going into July?
Quite a few. Yeah, it was again inconsistent, but we do obviously have, anything regarding a pandemic is part of our force majeure clause. But Chris said it best. Our agreements are a guide. to see what we can do together. And then when this came available, from a renewal standpoint, our renewing partners negotiated appropriately because they did want to protect their brand, and their ROI is heavily associated with attendance. So, we understood that, and we came up with a plan together. So it was again inconsistent, but I said to my team, and I can't remember, Brad, if you and I were talking about this, but my crucial conversations training came in very handy over these past 18 months, but it worked out for everybody.
And it's funny how these things happen too. Like you mentioned that, and I mean, there are certain things I always like to comment on, but there's certain things I'm not allowed to talk about either. And in my old world, I used to represent athletes and did a ton of media training with them and figured out what you can and can't say and how to do it properly. But similar to you, Pat, that 14 years that I did all of that stuff with the troubleshooting with athletes and visas and not showing what's going on became kind of my front line for myself, dealing with partners and just keeping them in the loop of what's going on, because the worst thing you can do in a pandemic when you're in our businesses is not be talking to your partners, whether it's once a week touch points or daily or even just a text message. So at least they feel safe and know what's going on and that you value them. And that was the one big learning from my old world that really applied to the last 18 months with all of my Montreal Canadiens partners, as well as the other ones I deal with their other properties, is just saying, hey, like one of the craziest stories. And I mean, I actually had the email framed at home. Right when things got bad with COVID, I sent off an email to a lot of the partners that I have and a lot of prospects that I was talking to about different things. And I just sent an email saying, just want to touch point. I hope you and your family are well. Too often we get caught up in the transactional relationship that we have, and we forget to just check in. How are you doing? Period. I sent it off, and they had a 99% answer rate. Everyone was saying, hey, Chris, you know what? You're the first person that did this. Thank you. You're not asking me about money. I got a bunch of people calling me saying, I thought you were going to call me to close. And I was like, look, there's something bigger out there. Don't get me wrong. We all like to make money, but there's a time and a place for it. And right now isn't a time to have those conversations. It's time to be human beings and just do a check-in. Like, how are your kids? How's your wife, or how's your husband, whatever the situation may be. And just showing that we're real human beings, because at the end of the day, like, money comes and goes, but health lasts forever, right? Well, it lasts until it doesn't. But it was just a fun little story that when I sent out that email, I said, oh, I'll see if it comes back. And I framed mine and then a couple of the responses. And it's just nice to have it as a kind of a memento of, no matter what you end up doing in life, don't forget, I mean, we're all the human beings at the end of the day, and we do what we do and we love what we do, but don't forget the smallest thing in life is just to send a follow-up and say, hey, how are you doing as a person? Forget the business. And that was super well received. And it was something that I talk about quite heavily with folks as well, just about that open line of communication.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, just the sales process in general, if you're always in for the sale, it comes across that way. And the relationship building piece just goes that much further to making sure that, it's going to be a long-standing thing, even when the partnership falls off, maintaining that relationship, because who knows when it's going to come back or that person's going to move somewhere else.
Well, that's exactly it. You never know where people land. And my first, I'll say, Brinkboard partner of the Montreal Canadiens was a company that people didn't know existed. They're based in Israel. And when people did some digging, they realized, oh, they make games. They made online app games kind of thing. And they had like 20 of the top 50 games in the world. And they were with us for 2 seasons. And the company pivoted and decided they weren't going to renew with us, and which I was fine with. But I was at the VP of marketing, the former VP of marketing's house last week. We went for dinner, me and my wife, and we're friends. And he said, you know what, Chris, I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm not here to talk business. I'm here to see how you guys are doing. How are your girls? You have a dog. We brought some stuff over, and it was just a nice way to reconnect with a first and foremost, he was a partner, but he became a friend. And when you can convert that, it's nice to be able to separate them both as well. And he's like, yeah, I'm doing some consulting work now for some other companies, and I want to bring you guys in. And I was like, no, it's not the time for that. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's talk about what we've been up to the last 2 years. He said, it's been 2 years since I've seen him. And it was nice to re-engage in a conversation with another human being that didn't want to rip my head off, because I know me and my wife have been together for a long time, but she's only put up with me for so long. So she's quite happy that I'm in the office today as opposed to being at home.
I don't know. Have you felt that this is a return to normal, or is there, the new normal, I guess, as everybody's calling it?
For us, no, we're not anywhere close to what we would have had in 2019. Again, it's really about the year-round third-party business that there's expectations, but it's getting better, and we have several bookings going into Q4. Probably dozens of bookings going into Q4 because we're such a large park and with multiple venues. Plus, we have so much construction going on with the expansion of the BMO Center. So there's we would have had a different normal anyway without a pandemic because of construction. But then on top of it, add select events not moving forward, but there's still quite a few there because of the confidence that people are having with the vaccine rollout. So it's going to take time.
I guess, Chris, going back to you having full stands, is that going to feel like normal, or is everything still adjusted? I mean, you've got all the protocols, et cetera.
Oh, it's still going to be extremely controlled. It's not just going to be I used the word corrals earlier. It'll be similar to that. There's going to be partitions. Don't leave your zone. It changes significantly for my world as well when we're hosting clients. We have an area in the Bell Center we call the Director's Lounge. It's a speakeasy, and you have to get directions to get there, and it's invite only. And that's unless something's changed in the last little bit, it won't be opening for a while. So certain elements of my normal will not be part of the season, but I often remove myself from my job as well when we have these kind of conversations. And I think for fans, it's a return to normal. It's, hey, I'm back in the Bell Center. I'm back watching my Montreal Canadiens, or maybe they're not Habs fans. Hey, I'm watching the Leafs that are in town, or the Canucks, or whoever else is in our division. And I think it's a return to a normal for a lot of people, but I don't think we're ever going to return to our old normal. I think it'll be a combination of colliding worlds that did coexist on their own, but there'll be some stuff that we're never going to stop doing here. And I fully support it. Like, I was going through my Facebook memories a few weeks ago, and I saw one from 2004. And I mean, I used to travel a lot in my old world, spent more time on airplanes than I did on the ground for a long time. And I put up a picture. It was how not to get sick when traveling. And I had, there was a bottle of Purell in the picture. I had Redoxon, which is like a vitamin C tablet you throw into water. And then I had a face mask. And I made that saying, who would have thought that I was onto something back then? Because that's what the world's come to now. I mean, I was on my first flight about a month ago. I flew to my parents' place, and it was the most obscure, weird thing I've had in a long time. It took me 6 minutes to get through the Montreal airport, from check-in and security to leaving to land at Pearson, which is always a zoo. And Pearson was a hot mess. There was people everywhere. And granted, there's a lot more volume that goes to the Toronto airport than the Montreal airport, but it was just a whole different travel and experience. For someone that lived in airports as much as I did, it was not as easy to maneuver and navigate through a space that I used to be super comfortable in.
And we've spent a lot of time talking about your experience with the Canadiens, but you've got Oshiega coming up.
Yeah, that's next week.
How's that shaping up for your partners and attendance?
Yeah, no. So attendance, what we did was when we initially launched it, we were doing a reduced version of it. So it's essentially positioned as like the Oshiega block party. Still 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's sold out, 10,000 people per day. I don't think they're going to release more tickets, but who knows? A lot of our partners that were with us, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Some were like, hey, well, we're still going to do stuff. Obviously, there's no experiential activations happening, but doing stuff with the rights. So maybe contests on social to win tickets, like things that you really can't get your hands on. We do have quite a few partners that are still on site, whether it's just brand or like, we'll call them Instagram moment pictures that can be taken with a brand associated to it. And I'm excited. I'm actually going Sunday out of all nights. I decided to go close up the festival this year, and I'm kind of curious how it's going to play out. I mean, we don't have our normal 7 stages. We have 2. It's a reduced venue, obviously, 7 stages, and I forget how many acts we normally have, but two stages. I think it's like maybe 10 shows per stage per day. Controlled how it's all set up. Our hospitality isn't what it once was, but there's still our suites that are there, and certain partners have them as part of their deals. But similar to everything else we're doing it under extreme control, and the measures will all be in place similar to what they are in the Bell Center out on the island in Ile Saint-Hélène, where everything is hosted. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm the first person that's a little bit nervous to going back to that, because it's one thing inside the Bell Center where I can go to my office if I want and relax a little bit, but to go back out there and seeing 10,000 people who are super excited to be out, makes me a little nervous. And I don't mean that in a bad way, just going back to normal. I think it's going to take different people a different amount of time to get accustomed to and adjust it again.
Yeah, and it's been fantastic to hear the experience and kind of learn from where you guys have been. I know there's way more questions that we got in advance than we're able to cover through this 1 hour session. Really appreciate you guys participating in this, and I know if anybody's got any questions following on, hopefully you guys are good to have me share your email in case they want to bounce some ideas off you or thoughts or pick your brain. But I'll give you guys the opportunity for the last words.
I just don't share my email with Brent.
Okay. He may turn on his mic now.
Yeah, he's been off camera, and no, I was expecting a comment at least.
Perfect. And any last words for you, Pat?
No, just thank you for this. And I know, thank you for everybody who attended and got to hear a little bit. And Chris and I, like we said, we could probably both do an hour session alone on what we went through this past year. And it's really fun to reminisce and have the return of any form of live events. And whether it's something that you're producing yourself or attending yourself, I think you really need to get out there and continue to feel confident. My competitive nature is coming out a little bit here. I'm vaccinated 3 times. There you go, Chris. So got 1 extra on Chris, but the return will be there, and people will feel more confident. I'm incredibly confident of that. So thank you for this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in and just throw one more thing in there too. And I think it's great that we're all here together on this virtual call, but maybe one day we all get together in person and kind of talk about all the weird things we've all been through collectively. And one more thing too, and I know Brad mentioned it, but any questions or anything you guys might ever want to chat about it, we're both on there. All 3 of us are on LinkedIn. Don't be shy to connect. Always happy to bounce ideas that could help us all. I think the smartest thing we can do is surround ourselves with like-minded people and bounce ideas, because it just makes us smarter and better at how we do our own job. So thank you all for being here, and looking forward to maybe one day things going a little bit back to normal. And I see a nice message here from Mr. Barutz. He's in the airport already. So seems like a lame excuse for no video though, but we'll let him off the hook.
Yeah, certainly the Mark Harrison's next.
There we go.
There it is.
Yeah, Mark Harrison's next sponsorship X is going to be interesting. It'll be great to get everybody together and start sharing all these different elements and matching up against everybody. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to Chris and to Pat for being part of this, and look forward to seeing you guys on our next calls. Bye guys.
See you.